Hey guys, Haley here again. As promised, going to do a quick video talking about the motorcycle and everything you need to get done to your motorcycle to get ready to go to the track. The list is not long. I'm just going to kind of run through it pretty quickly just to show you how easy it is to get your motorcycle ready to go and kind of what you're going to want to check before you go and what the organization will likely check when you get there. So I made a short list. I'll kind of run through those in a second. But just in terms of process, what's going to happen is you're going to show up with your bike ready to ride, and you're going to get your bike scrutineered or tech inspected. So basically what's going to happen is you're going to ride your motorcycle over to a bunch of really friendly people over near registration, and they're basically going to inspect your bike to make sure that it's safe and ready to ride to the track. And this varies a little bit between each organization and oftentimes even between people that you have teching you for the day. But for the most part, they're kind of all the same across organizations. Some orgs have special rules, so you're always going to want to check. But this video should, in general, get you ready to go. So, first item on our list is that your motorcycle is safe. And now that doesn't mean that your motorcycle is not falling apart or the engine's going to explode or you're missing parts. What that means is that your motorcycle is ready to go on the track and is ready to experience the rigors of track riding, because track riding is a lot harder on a motorcycle than just regular old street riding. A bike that's safe at 30 miles an hour might not be safe at 120 miles an hour. So I'm just going to run really quickly through the bike and what the tech inspection folks are going to be looking for when they talk about a motorcycle being safe. So first and foremost is tires. You're going to want to be at least 50% life or more on your tires. And you can measure that by looking at the tread bars. You can measure it by using a tire depth gauge. You can measure it with a coin even, just to see how deep the tread is left on the tires. If you have slicks, that's different, but this video isn't really for you if you have slicks. I would say these tires probably do not have enough tread left for me to do a track day on them. These tires probably do. You can see I've got probably double the tread left on this tire that I do on the BMW. So I would probably replace these tires before I went to the track. They're also pretty old. Tires will age out. You want to be working with fresh rubber because that's the only thing that touches the ground. So definitely want to have good tires. Same with brake pads, at least half life. You can check those by visually inspecting them. Next thing they're going to check is general condition of the motorcycle. They're going to make sure that none of the bodywork's fallen off or loose. You don't want anything flapping, nothing that immediately makes the motorcycle look unsafe. They're also going to check to make sure that your clip-ons are tight, they're not at weird angles, it doesn't look like the bike has been crashed recently and not fixed properly. Some orgs will check the throttle return. So bikes all have a spring inside of the throttle that basically returns it to closed. They're going to check to make sure that your throttle is self-closing. They're going to check, they might check that your suspension isn't all the way bottomed out, that your fork seals aren't leaking, those kinds of items. The next thing they're going to check is your brake lever and your clutch lever. They're going to make sure that it has good feedback, that they return, that they do what they're supposed to do, they actuate the brakes or the clutch. And the other thing they might check, and this kind of all rolls into the motorcycle being safe, is what you've got going on for fluid retention. So again, most street bikes going to the track, you don't need safety wire or anything fancy like that, but they will check what is happening with your oil situation. Not every track has the same rules about oil, but the tracks that I go to have a rule that there are no K&N filters allowed. My home track does not allow any filter with a nut on it at all, so that includes the high flow filter. You can argue all you like about that, but the tracks set the rules, you have to follow the rules. I actually ended up doing a trackside oil change on the ZX-10 my first day at my home track because I had a high flow filter that I bought to do safety wiring with, and those are not allowed. So you definitely, if you have any concerns about it, just use OEM filters. It's really not a good reason not to. They're not really any more expensive. But for the most part, any filter without a nut, as long as it's not K&N, it will be fine. Not every track checks that, but like I said, some do. So that pretty much covers everything when we talk about safety. I'm sure some tracks have other things they're going to be looking for. They'll probably check your chain and maybe your kickstand as well, make sure that it snaps up into the up position. But that pretty much covers what most organizations are going to be looking at when they are checking your motorcycle for just the safety portion of it. The next item is that you have your lights either covered or disabled. So most guys use painter's tape, and they'll just painter's tape over the light and the front and the back. And you're going to want to make sure you get everything, both headlights, even if one doesn't work. You know, you've got the situation like most sport bikes where you only have one headlight and the other one's a high beam. Make sure they're both taped. It's really easy to bump the high beam button because on most bikes it's right next to the lap timer, or is the lap timer. Also, you're going to want to make sure you tape your tail light. The reasoning for that is really that taillights especially can be really distracting to other riders. We're all trying to focus and make sure that we're riding safely and that we're keeping you, the rider in front of us, safe. And if I can see taillights, it's distracting. And even if it distracts me for 10 milliseconds, that's enough that could slow everything else that I'm doing down, and I could make a mistake because of it. So just go ahead and tape them up. Taillights especially. Be really diligent about your taping. It's really easy for light to come through, especially if you have one of these fancy LED tail lights that's super bright. And also tape up your mirrors. A lot of people will tape and fold. Basically, that's just to prevent you from looking behind you because you never ever want to look behind you. And also, it's really easy to get glare off the mirrors into other people's eyes. So I used to just remove mine. You can fold them and tape them. You can just tape them, whatever floats your boat. Number 3, remove your license plates and anything else you have loose. I've specified license plates because I imagine that will be what most people have to remove. But you're going to want to remove anything that's loose on the bike. So this tail bag, not exactly loose, but I'd probably remove it. The plate I would remove. Pretty much anything that you want to stay on the bike has to be tied to the bike in some way. So not every track has this rule, but a lot of them have a rule that if you're going to put a GoPro on the bike, it has to be safety wired to the bike as well. Same with helmets. Some tracks ban GoPros on helmets entirely. Some say you have to have them safety wired to your helmet. Whatever. Just make sure that everything is properly secured and meets the track's rules for securing items that are not part of the bike. And number 4, and the last one, is tire pressures. For the love of all that is holy, do not show up to the track and go out with 42, 36 tire pressures, whatever the heck it says on the side here. Do not show up to the track and run those tire pressures. You're just going to be in for a really bad day. Those pressures are designed for the street, and the reason that they're designed that way is to preserve longevity on the rear tire. For the most part, the rear tire pressure is always going to be higher than the front with street pressures because you're trying to preserve that the rear tire as the best you can and keep it kind of overinflated. When you get to the track, you're going to want to have a lower rear pressure than your front pressure because for the most part, the weight of the bike is going to be shifting to the rear tire. The rear tire is the one that's going to be providing most of the grip. So either way, depending on how you do it, you can either go out and just give it a shot. Usually when I get to a new track or I'm working with new tires or a new bike or something, I will typically just go out 30-30. Not ideal. For the most part, what will end up happening is I start at 30-30. It kind of helps me feel the bike out a little, kind of is closer to that street feeling, and then I'll drop the rear quite a bit and drop the front a little bit. For reference, on these Michelin Power GPs, hot, I'm running about 28, 29, 27, 28, something like that. Cold, that would be 24, 25, and 25, 26 in the front. So much, much lower than street pressures. I think the pressures recommended for this bike are 42, 38 or something, 36. So much, much lower than street pressures. Really, I would suggest that you try to find the tire vendor at your track. Most tracks have a tire vendor, or at least somebody that vends something, maybe gear or rents gear or something like that. Reach out to them, ask them what they suggest, tell them what kind of tires you have, what group you're running in, what your pace is, and obviously what the temperature is like that day, and they can really help you out. They have a wealth of knowledge, especially if they're a tire vendor. They really know tires inside and out. So use their experience to help you. And and whatever they suggest, definitely take that over whatever I suggest. Definitely a better person to listen to, especially at your track, because every track is different. I've had these tires on my bike now for 6 track days. You can see I have barely any wear at all. This bike has only gone on Heartland Park. At my last track, Black Hawk Farms, I maybe got 2 or 3 days out of a set of tires. So every track is different, every tire is different. Really, you can start with what the manufacturer recommends or what your local tire vendor recommends and change it if you need to. Also, if you're working with a suspension person at the track, they can also help you with tire pressures. And that is pretty much it. That list will get your bike to the track. Honestly, the way this bike is right now, it's pretty ready to go. I just have to tape up the lights and the tail light, and that bike would be ready to hit the track. One other thing I'm going to mention, just because it's something that I have on both the bikes that is a little contentious, is the crash protection and the grip pads. The grip pads are not as contentious. They're awesome. I'm just mentioning them because it's something super small you can do to your bike that will really help you get ready for the track. Not required, but I'm just going to mention it quickly. The crash protection is a little more contentious. There's a lot of schools of thought on the crash protection. I'll just tell you mine, I guess, and the counterpoint. I use the crash protection because I've had a couple of really low speed downs. There was no damage to the bike, and the crash protection saved all the fairings and saved the bike. So that was great. I use crash protection for that reason. The counter argument is if you are using crash protection, pretty much any kind of crash protection, anything that sticks out from the bike. So the sliders, either on the bar ends or on the frame, or axles, honestly, anything that's stiff, even technically stiff rear sets count as crash protection. So anything like that sticks off the bike that is hard and stiff, what can happen is if you go down at high speed on the track, as the bike slides, because it will most likely be sliding, as the bike slides and it goes from the smooth surface of the pavement to the grass, the crash protection is really likely to dig into the grass and flip the bike. So if you're going 120 and you go down, maybe the bike slows down to 80 miles an hour by the time it hits the grass. The bike's going to be flipping through the air at 80 to 50 miles an hour with you theoretically sliding next to it, under it, near it. So that can be really dangerous. And obviously, if it's flipping now, it's doing a lot more damage to the bike than if the bike had just slid on its side. So you kind of have to hedge your bets there. If you're more concerned that you're going to have a really high speed crash and you're okay with replacing odds and ends, don't run the crash protection. If you're considering, especially for like a street bike, you're going to have a lower speed crash, or I actually dropped this bike in the garage the other day, as you can see from the awesome hole in the ground. Because I had crash protection, in this case it was the foot peg, the bike just fell on the foot peg and there was no damage to the bike whatsoever. So kind of up to you. I offer both points because there is an argument to be made for both. So whatever floats your boat. If you have crash protection, you probably already know that. If you don't and you're considering getting it, hopefully I've helped you make your decision one way or another. The engine protection, on the other hand, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It's great. It's added insurance. Basically, you can see this one's good. I think the other side's already taken a hit. It will save your engine cases if something goes wrong. Yeah, so you can see on this side, this one's actually saved that case already. So I would highly suggest that as well as a mod that you could do to make your bike a little more track ready. The only other item really that I'll even mention is race fairings. And I might do a full dedicated video on mods you can do to your bike to make it a little more track friendly, but just want to mention it really quickly. Race fairings are not in any way required on any bike for any reason. They're pretty much only done it's a weight savings option, and the race fairings tend to be made out of a different material than the OEM fairings, and they're a little tougher, easier to repair, and lighter, as I mentioned, weight savings. But definitely not required, so don't be thinking you have to have a track race bike to be able to go to the track. Regular old street bike is more than enough. So I think that about covers it. If there's anything that you think I missed or anything maybe you thought you'd need but I didn't cover, go ahead and leave a comment down below. I really like interacting with you guys about these videos and hearing your experiences with getting your bikes ready to go to the track. So yeah, go ahead and let me know. And if you like this content and other track related content, go ahead and give the channel a subscription. I really appreciate it, and we're getting really close to 100 subscribers, so maybe we'll do some kind of special video for that. I do have a trip coming up pretty soon that I'll probably be filming as well. So until the next time, enjoy the ride. Bye.